They said my grandmother didn't deserve a dime. That she was old, confused, and honestly, not worth fighting over, so they took everything. Her house, her savings, her memories. And they left me with a letter. Just a letter, but what they didn't know is that she hid something inside that letter. Something none of them were supposed to find. And by the time I was done reading it, I knew I had the power to destroy them all. Because the truth didn't die with her. It waited for me. It was raining, the day we read my grandmother. Will not the poetic kind of rain that makes the grass glisten and windows fog. No, this was cold, impatient and loud. The kind of rain that hits the pavement in sheets and makes the whole world feel like it's holding its breath. I remember watching it streak down the glass in Mr. Hargrove's office, fast, relentless, almost angry. There were 7 of us there, my mother Alina dressed in an expensive black dress she hadn't worn since my cousin's wedding. She sniffled once or twice, but her eyes weren't red. Her makeup was still perfect. My Uncle Thomas, her younger brother, was already asking questions about the timeline the second he walked in. Not about Grandma's final days. About when the estate transfers would be handled. Aunt Julia barely spoke. She walked in late, muttered something about traffic, and kept her sunglasses on even inside. She didn't take them off once. And me. I sat in the farthest chair. No one greeted me. No one offered me a seat. I just walked in and sat down quietly, holding my bag in my lap like it was the only safe thing in the room. I felt out of place. Not because I didn't belong, but because none of them did. I had lived with my grandma for the last 2 years. I was the one who made her tea every morning. The one who reminded her to take her pills. The one who brushed her hair when her hands were too shaky. These people. They hadn't visited once in months. But now they were here because there was something to gain. The lawyer, Mr. Hargrove, cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "We're here to read the last will and testament of Maria Navarro." He paused, glancing at the heavy folder in front of him. He didn't smile. He didn't blink much either. He looked uncomfortable. Like this wasn't the first messy family he'd seen, but maybe one of the worst. "Mrs. Navarro passed away peacefully in her sleep 2 weeks ago," he continued. "What we're reviewing today was filed with our office 3 days after her passing." I looked up 3 days after. I knew my grandma had a will, she told me so herself. But why would it be filed after she died, instead of years ago when she had it written? "The estate will be divided as follows," he said. Everyone leaned forward subtly but clearly. I could feel the air change in the room. The anticipation, the greed hiding just behind polite nods. To her 3 children, Thomas, Alina and Julia Maria Navarro, leaves the entirety of her estate, her home, her financial assets, and all remaining possessions. I felt like I had been slapped. Entirety, there was no mention of me, none. I waited. Maybe he wasn't finished, but then he added, almost too quickly, to her granddaughter, Lena Navarro, she leaves. A personal letter. Silence, heavy, awkward. Not the kind that says how sad, the kind that says well, that's that. I heard my uncle exhale through his nose. My mother tapped her nails against her handbag. Julia smirked, I swear she smirked, and then looked away. I didn't move. A letter. That's it. The woman I helped take care of. The woman who once told me, "One day this house will be yours." All she left me was a letter. Mr. Hargrove handed me a sealed envelope. Thick, heavy, my name written in perfect cursive across the front, Lena with a note just beneath it. "Open only when you're truly alone." I nodded, gripping it tightly in both hands, as if it would slip away like everything else had. No one asked me what it said. No one looked my way. The moment the meeting was over, the room buzzed with talk of appraisals, keys, bank statements, no mention of her life. No gratitude for the woman who had raised them. No grief, just gain. But I knew something they didn't. That letter, it wasn't a farewell, it was a message, a warning, and maybe, a weapon. And somehow, I knew deep in my chest that she had left me more than anyone else in that room. They just hadn't figured it out yet. I didn't open it right away. That envelope sat in my jacket pocket for hours like it was burning a hole through the fabric. I walked home alone that day, no one offered a ride. My mother left with Aunt Julia. Uncle Thomas drove off before I even stepped outside. I didn't expect anything else from them. Honestly, by the time I got home, the sun was low, and the silence in my bedroom was louder than ever. I sat on the edge of my bed, still in my coat, still holding the letter. For a few moments, I just stared at it, my name, written in her soft cursive, Looked like it belonged on a birthday card. Not something left behind like this. Open only when you're truly alone. That line echoed in my head over and over. It didn't feel like a suggestion. It felt like a warning, so I locked the door, drew the blinds, and turned off my phone. Only then, in complete stillness, did I finally slide my finger under the envelope's seal. Inside was a single folded page, thick yellowing at the edges, like it had been touched and refolded many times. Her handwriting filled the page, clear, neat, careful. I began to read. My Lena, if you're reading this, then they did what I feared most. They took everything. And they think I let them. But you know me better than that. Don't you? This was never meant to be your burden. Sweetheart, you've already carried so much. You were the only one who stayed. The only one who helped me brush my hair when my hands couldn't stop shaking. The only one who noticed when I started hiding things, not because I forgot, but because I didn't trust them anymore. You were never supposed to fight this fight, but I believe you're the only one who can win it. I never changed my will. Not once. They forged it. All of it. The real one. The one I signed 5 years ago with Mr. Vance, before your grandfather's funeral. It's still here. I never threw it away. It's hidden, just like the papers, the proof, the letters. You remember the wardrobe in my room? Behind the loose panel on the back left. Where we used to hide your birthday gifts when you were little. Everything's there. Take it to someone you trust, not your mother. Not your uncle, not Julia. No one from this family. You'll know what to do once you see what's inside. They don't know you. They don't see you. But I do. They never saw you coming. And I always knew it would be you. Grandma sat there, holding the letter, my breath caught in my throat. For a long time, I didn't move. I couldn't. I just kept reading it over and over, not because I didn't believe her, but because I did. Because I knew. She had hinted at it. Little comments here and there, after a phone call with my uncle, or when mail went missing, or when the nurse came late and she whispered, "Don't trust everyone who smiles, Lena." Back then, I thought it was the pain talking, but now, I understood. She had been fighting her own children, silently, carefully, for who knows how long, and I had been right in the middle of it. Without knowing, I stayed up the entire night thinking about what to do next. At 3:14 a.m., I opened Google and searched, how to tell if a will is forged. Then, can a notary stamp be fake? Then, what happens if a lawyer reads a fake will? And finally, what to do if your family commits inheritance fraud. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. At 6:07 a.m., I packed a backpack, gloves, flashlight, phone charger, a padlock, and a copy of her letter. I took the bus to her house. I had the key. She gave it to me months ago, just in case. She knew I'd come back. The house was quiet, still exactly how she left it. The porch creaked the same way it always had. The ivy climbing the brick walls was overgrown now, and the mailbox was stuffed with unread letters from banks and estate services and offers from realtors who heard about the death. I didn't open anything. I walked through the front door, shut it behind me, and locked it tight. Her slippers were still beside the couch, the tea kettle still on the stove. I didn't pause. I went straight to her bedroom. The wardrobe stood exactly where it always had, old, elegant, heavy with secrets. I opened it slowly. The scent of lavender and cedar rushed out her scent. I moved aside the scarves, the cardigans, the winter coats. And there it was. The loose panel. Slightly warped at the bottom. I pressed gently. It clicked open, and behind it, a thick manila folder, taped shut. Labeled in black marker, if they ever betray me. I sat down on the floor, legs crossed, and opened it. Inside were pages and pages, and everything was labeled. Original will 5 years ago. Signed by Maria Navarro. Witnessed, stamped, bank. Statements showing transfers that didn't make sense. Handwritten notes. Thomas suggested changing my will again. I said no. Printed emails, between Uncle Thomas and someone named Brian, a different lawyer. Comparison sheets. Her real signature versus the forged one. A letter to the court. A draft. Never submitted. And finally, a second letter, folded separately, with only one line on it. For Lena, in case you need to finish what I couldn't. I wasn't scared anymore. Not even a little, because they thought they buried her voice, but she passed it down to me, and I was going to make sure they all heard it, loud and clear. By the time I stepped outside, the sun had risen, weak and silver, barely lighting the sky. The folder felt heavier than it should have, like it wasn't just filled with paper, but with everything they tried to steal. I didn't go home. I didn't tell anyone. I went to the only place I thought would take me seriously. The lawyer's office. Mr. Hargrove looked surprised when I walked in unannounced. His eyes darted from me to the folder in my hands. Miss Navarro, is everything all right? Not yet, I said. But I think it will be. He led me to a small side office, not the grand room from before. This one had real chairs, dusty blinds, and a single lamp that flickered. I placed the folder on the desk and opened it slowly. He didn't speak for a full minute. He read the old will, compared the signatures, flipped through the emails. When he got to the draft complaint, he looked up at me with a new expression. Not pity, not sympathy, but respect. This, he said, turning the pages carefully. This is serious. It's real, I said. He nodded. I believe you. The next few days moved fast. He contacted the county, filed an affidavit, initiated an internal audit. There was no dramatic courtroom scene, no cameras, no reporters. But the change was real. The original will was validated. The fraudulent document was voided, and the estate, the house, the savings, everything was transferred into my name, just like she intended. But this wasn't just about money, and I wasn't finished. Because there were still things I needed to say, things they needed to hear. I called a meeting, not at the lawyer's office, at Grandma's house, her house. Now legally mine. I invited them all. My mother, Uncle Thomas, Aunt Julia, even the cousin who never visited but posted a black and white photo of her beloved Nana the day she passed. They came, not because they wanted to, because they were scared. They had heard the rumors, heard about the reversal, heard that Lena found something. I greeted them at the door. No hugs, no small talk, just one sentence. I think we need to clear a few things up. We sat in the living room. No one touched the tea I made. No one smiled. I placed the folder on the coffee table and began reading. First, the email from Uncle Thomas. If we just use an older version and change the line about the house, she never notice. She doesn't even check her mail. Then, Aunt Julia's text from Grandma's phone. Yes, she had the screenshots printed. Lena's getting too involved. We need to make sure she's not around when we handle the paperwork. And finally, the letter from Grandma. Her words, her handwriting. I read it aloud, every sentence, even the one that said, "They never saw you coming." By the time I finished, no one was looking at me. My mother had tears in her eyes, not from guilt, but fear. Thomas had gone pale. Julia crossed her arms, jaw clenched. "Do you know what this means?" I asked. "You think you're so righteous," my uncle snapped suddenly. She was confused. She didn't know what she was signing. "That's not what the signature comparison says," I replied calmly. "You're just a kid," Julia muttered. "She barely left you anything for a reason." I held up the court documents. "She left me everything. Now the law agrees." Silence. They left one by one. No apologies, no confessions, just shame wrapped in silence. But I wasn't angry anymore. Not at them. I just felt full, not with revenge, with clarity, because the house was no longer a place of shadows. It was hers again, and now it was mine. That night, I sat in her old rocking chair, the one near the window. I read the letter one more time, and then I took out a new piece of paper, and I started writing. Not to fight, but to remember. I spent the next week alone in the house, not out of fear, but out of choice. I needed time, to think, to remember, to breathe at first. It felt like I was living in a museum. Everything still smelled like her. Lavender, old paper, cinnamon tea. Her shoes still sat by the back door. Her robe still hung on the hook. It was like she had just stepped out and would be back any minute. But of course, she wouldn't, so I made a decision. If they were going to forget her, then I was going to make sure the world remembered. I didn't start with a press release or some big announcement. I started with a shoebox, a faded blue one under her bed, filled with letters she had written but never sent. Dozens of them. Some to old friends, some to her children, most to herself. "I don't think they'll come this Christmas. I hope Lena knows I saved that recipe she liked. Maybe I'll sign the house over to her early. No, not yet. It'll just cause a fight." These weren't angry letters. They were lonely ones. I cried harder reading that box than I did at her funeral, because this house wasn't just a structure. It was her voice, her fears, her quiet courage, and now it was mine. That's when the idea came. Not out of revenge, but out of responsibility. I would turn the house into something more. Something she'd be proud of, Something she never had for herself, but always wished existed. I called it the Maria Foundation, a place for elderly women, especially those who had been isolated, manipulated, or financially abused by the very people who were supposed to care for them. At first, it was just me and one folding table, but I made flyers. I knocked on doors, I went to churches, clinics, and markets. I asked anyone with gray hair and a tired look if they'd like a place to talk. And then, slowly, they came. The first woman to show up was named Dora, 82. She walked with a cane and didn't smile much. She sat across from me and asked, "Is this place real?" "As real as your story," I said. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she pulled out a stack of envelopes. My nephew emptied my account and told me I was crazy. The bank believed him. I didn't promise I could fix it, but I promised I'd listen. And I did. By the end of the first month, we had 6 regulars, then 12, then 20-4. They came not just for advice, but for relief, for community. For the first time, someone was telling them, "You're not paranoid, you're not confused, you're not alone." And they believed it because I believed it, because she believed in me. In the evenings, after everyone left, I'd sit in the same chair she used to knit in, and I'd whisper, aloud, "They remember you now, Grandma, they remember?" Some days, I still feel that sting of betrayal, of injustice. When I walk past my mother on the street and she pretends not to see me, when I get legal notices from my uncle's lawyer trying to appeal the estate transfer, when I hear my cousin online talking about family legacies that don't belong to her. But then someone knocks on our door. A woman with hands that tremble and eyes that search the ground. And I know why I'm here. This wasn't about money. It never was. This was about truth. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that waits quiet, steady until someone's finally willing to listen, in every room. I've kept a piece of her. The rocking chair, the tea tins, the framed letter, the one she wrote me, hanging above the fireplace, and beneath it a plaque that reads, "For Maria Navarro, a woman whose silence spoke louder than lies," because that's who she was. And I'll never let them rewrite that. Again, it's been a year. 1 full year since I sat in that cold room, surrounded by people who couldn't even fake their grief. 1 year since they stole everything. And I found the only thing that mattered, the truth. The house looks different now. Not because I renovated it, I didn't. The wallpaper still peels slightly near the kitchen window. The floors still creak in the same places, but it feels different because it's alive again. The rooms are full of stories, not secrets. The kind of stories my grandmother never got to tell. And the kind of women she never stopped believing. We hold weekly meetings now. Wednesdays at 5 p.m. We've added 2 couches, 3 armchairs, and more blankets than I can count. Sometimes we bake cookies. Sometimes we just sit in silence. And sometimes someone cries, but not out of sadness, out of relief, because for many of these women, this is the first time they've been allowed to speak without being told they're wrong, or dramatic, or confused. They've shared stories that sound eerily familiar. A son who forged his mother's signature to sell her car. A daughter who convinced the bank to freeze her mother's account. A neighbor who borrowed medicine and never brought it back. Different names. Same wounds. I don't offer legal advice, I'm not a professional. But I offer something else. A space, a belief, that their pain matters. That their memories are still theirs. That they're not invisible. Last month, a woman named Esther came in. She was soft-spoken, dressed in pale blue, and smelled like rosemary and peppermint. After the others left, she pulled me aside. "Your grandmother used to sit beside me at church," she said. She always carried this old purse, brown leather, little brass clasp, and she kept tissues and hard candies inside. But you know what else she kept? A folded up paper with your name on it. She showed it to me once, said, "This one's mine. She's got my heart, even when I'm gone." I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just nodded tightly, softly, and blinked away the tears that came faster than I expected. Sometimes, I still get angry. Not often, but it comes in flashes, like when I walk by my uncle's name on a building downtown. Or when I hear my mother on the phone pretending like nothing ever happened. Or when I scroll past a family photo from Julia's feed, a carefully staged holiday card captioned "Family First." Always. But then I sit at Grandma's piano, the one she used to play lullabies on. The one they didn't want, said it was too old and heavy. And I play the only song I remember. The one she taught me when I was 9. After I fell off my bike, and cried for an hour. Sometimes, she told me, You need to sit with the hurt long enough to hear the truth behind it. I didn't understand back then. I do now. I've been asked if I'll ever forgive them. The answer is, I don't need to, because this everything I've built is not about them. It's about her handwriting, her courage, her belief in me, when no one else looked twice. We've filed 3 official claims of elder abuse. So far, 2 were dismissed. 1 is still being investigated. But none of that feels like failure, because every single woman who walks through our door now walks in with her head a little higher, her voice a little steadier, her story finally heard. And that is the only justice my grandmother ever wanted. People talk about legacy like it's this big, shiny thing, like a trophy, or a title, or a plaque on a wall. But legacy, I've learned, is quieter than that. It's a letter you tuck into a coat pocket. It's a recipe, written on a torn index card. It's a rocking chair that still holds your shape long after you're gone. It's what you leave behind in the people who loved you and what they do with it. She left me a letter. They left with her things, but I kept her voice. And now it echoes in every room they tried to erase her from. Epilogue line for voiceover optional. They said my grandma didn't deserve a dime, but she gave me something they never had. Her story, her strength, her silence turned into power. And now, they'll never be able to bury her again.